Hello music fans, welcome to the Death by Unicorn channel for an episode of What's New 2023. Today I'm going to talk about 9 new metal, rock, and prog albums that came out over the past week and give my quick first impressions on them, and I'll talk about them in my order of preference, starting with Unitopia and their album 7 Chambers. This is progressive rock. It's the 5th album by this Australian band. It ends with 2 awesome epics that are both over 18 minutes long. The whole album has lots of great violin, flute, and vocal melodies. This band has a very similar lineup to United Progressive Fraternity, who also put out an interesting album earlier this year. That band was actually formed after this band, after Utopia disbanded, but I guess they decided to regroup Utopia but also keep United Progressive Fraternity going. The United Progressive Fraternity album has a lot more guests and is more musical, more like a musical theater kind of sound, but this release from Utopia sounds more like a band and it's great. So I prefer this release from Utopia. I look forward to going back and listening to their back catalog, and if it's as good as this, or maybe it'll be even better, I think I'll have another band to add to my favorites list. It's got a lot of classic 70s prog vibes, but also lots of modern influences and sounds in there as well. For fans of bands like Genesis, yes, Jethro Tull, but also some more modern stuff like Porcupine Tree and Transatlantic. Next up is another one that I was considering putting at the top of my list. It's kind of interchangeable between Unitopia and this in terms of what's my favorite from the past week. This is Noveria with their album The Gates of the Underworld. This is progressive power metal. It's the 4th album by this Italian band. For fans of bands like Symphony X, Evergrey, and Redemption, this sounds like a long-lost Symphony X album, which is great because I love Symphony X. There's amazing guitar solos on here, lots of shredding. The vocals are in between the sound of Devin Townsend and Russell Allen, and they really do a great job. Next up, I want to talk about Course of Fate and their album Somnium. This is progressive metal. It's the 2nd album by this band from Norway. If you're a fan of Queensryche, I think you'll like this. It sounds kind of like them vocally, but has a bit more of a modern vibe as well. Next up is a metalcore album by The Word Alive. It's called Hard Reset. This is metalcore. It's got some post-hardcore, alternative, and pop influences thrown in there. It's the 7th album. This band is from the US. If you're a fan of catchy metalcore with fun, heavy breakdowns, screen vocals balanced out with catchy hooks and poppy sung vocals, you'll like this. It's reminiscent of bands like Killswitch Engage and All That Remains, but with a bit more of a modern edge like Bring Me the Horizon and Architects. And then I also checked out Dethklok and their album Dethalbum 4. All the other albums that I mentioned today came out on August 25th, but this one came out on August 22nd. This is kind of comedic melodic death metal. It's the 4th album by this fictional band from the Adult Swim animated TV series called Metalocalypse. I've always enjoyed the show. It's really cool that the music from the band in the show is so well done too. Instead of just being kind of lame throwaway music, they actually have great riffs and they took the time to write really good songs. I used to love playing one of their older songs, Thunder Horse, on Guitar Hero. It was really fun. If you're a fan of another comedic melodic death metal band like Necrogoblikon, I think you'll like this. Maybe a little bit of like In Flames, like older In Flames style in here. Check this out. Next up is Blut Aus and their album Disharmonium Nahab. This is avant-garde black metal. It's the 16th album by this French band. It's very avant-garde and dissonant black metal. Definitely not for beginners. It's pretty extreme and out there. It's very interesting and enjoyable, but maybe a bit too dissonant even for me to listen to often. And I actually tend to enjoy dissonant music, but this one's pretty wild. I've got 3 more to go through. I'm on U.D.O now, or U.D.O, and their album Touchdown. This is more traditional heavy metal. It's the 18th album by this German band that started following U.D.O's departure from Accept. He was the singer of Accept, but then he left that band. But this still sounds a lot like his band Accept, so if you're a fan of them, you'll like this U.D.O album. It's kind of like Judas Priest meets AC/DC. And then another one that's kind of more traditional, maybe hard rock sounding. This is an album from Vandenberg. It's called Sin. It's the 5th album by this Dutch-American band. They formed way back in 1981. They made 3 albums in the 80s, but then they disbanded in 1987. But they returned with their 4th album in 2020. I'm not very familiar with them, but I heard the single Sin and thought it sounded like a solid hard rock track, so I figured I'd check out this album. The album was enjoyable, but nothing too special, likely not one I'd return to. Kind of just sounds like aging rockers, which is kind of what it is, but they do a good job and it's well performed. And lastly, I'll mention another one from Dethklok. This is Metalocalypse, Army of the Doomstar. It's the soundtrack to the movie. It's more comedic melodic death metal, but there's some like electronic songs, and it's a pretty fun listen for a soundtrack album, so I have to put that caveat in there. You can tell it's a soundtrack. It's not really designed as a proper album, so it's not really my thing. I won't go back to it much, but I do want to see the movie because I think Metalocalypse is a pretty cool show, and I'm interested in checking this out. And that's it for my thoughts on these 9 new albums that came out over the past week. What did you think of these? Was there anything else in the metal, rock, and prog world that came out that you think I'd be interested in? Let me know down in the comments, and until next time, peace out.